Okay, so hello everyone. It is a great pleasure to have you today attending the 6th Law Fair. So thank you for expressing your interest to attend our event. My name is Dr. Llb. I am the lecturer in Company Law and Corporate Governance, and I am also the Llb course leader of the program. Unfortunately, our head of school, Professor Stephanie Lole-Shailu, will not be able to attend our event, but she kindly prepared a video for you. So I'm going to share the video as a welcoming address.
Dear students, dear colleagues, good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Professor Stephanie Lole-Shailu. I am the head of the School of Law of the University of Central Lancashire in Cyprus, or UCLan Cyprus. I'm very happy to welcome you to this 6th edition of our law fair and our 2nd online edition due to the pandemic. I hope you are comfortable and I'm sure you will enjoy the law fair. We are happy to welcome participants from nearby, but also from further away, and that is thanks to the technology. So we are very happy that this is working. Indeed, at UCLan Cyprus Law School, this is one of our strong points: interactive learning accessible to all in an international academic and professional environment. Our premises are state-of-the-art, and we even have our own moot court room, which we utilize together with students, but also the legal community and the judiciary in Cyprus and from the UK on multiple occasions. And that may either form part of the curriculum that students will learn at UCLan Cyprus, or as part of co- and extracurricular activities like today. Thus, I would like to encourage you all to visit our website and our school in particular at uclancyprus.ac.cy. Please select the School of Law under Studies. There you will be able to collect multiple information on our LLB and LLM programs, our team of academics, but also our wealth of activities that are all student-centered, even when it's about research. We do involve students. I thank you all for attending today, and I'm also very grateful to my colleagues for organizing and participating to today's event, particularly Dr. Lida Pitsilidou, who is our LLB course leader, for having organized the whole event. Thank you very much, Lida. And also our colleagues, Dr. Nasia Hadjigeorgiou, who is the deputy head of the School of Law, as well as Dr. Andreas Marco, who is lecturer in EU law and theory, for their inputs. I wish you all the best, and I'm sure you will enjoy the proceedings, and I look forward to being in touch with you again. Anyone can contact me. You can find my details on the website, and I'm sure that Lida can provide them to you. Thank you all. Good day.
So thank you for listening to the video prepared by our head of school. Now we are going to have our first interactive activity titled as The Law of Theft. This will be presented by Dr. Nasia Hadjigeorgiou, the assistant professor in transitional justice and human rights, and the deputy head of school and LLB deputy course leader. So Nasia, if you start with your activity, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. So the discussion we will be having today focuses on the law of theft. Let me start by saying, by the way, before I actually start with the law, let me say that I have shared a handout in the chat. That because I will not be using a PowerPoint presentation, I have shared a handout in the chat with basically outlines what we will be covering today. It's a very brief summary of the law of theft, and then 2 short exercises that hopefully we will get to at the end of the session. So let me say from the outset that in order for someone to be convicted of a criminal offense, any criminal offense, that is murder, manslaughter, theft, rape, fraud, whatever that you can think of as criminal, two things must exist, right? You need to have a criminal act, and you need to have what we call a criminal mind or a guilty mind. So if we take, for example, the law of murder, which is the easiest, in order for someone to be found guilty of murder, you need the criminal act. In the case of murder, that would be the actual killing of another person. And you need to have the criminal mind. You need to want to kill the other person. If one of the two is absent, you don't have a crime. So if you have a criminal act, so you have killed someone, but you didn't want to kill someone, that's not murder, that's just an accident, okay? On the other hand, if you have the criminal mind, but not the criminal act, so you want to kill someone, but you never get around to it, you might not be a very good person, but you're not a criminal, okay? So for every single crime, and that includes theft, which is what we will be talking about, you need these two elements, the criminal act and the guilty mind, or what we commonly call in criminal law, because the lawyers like using Latin phrases, the actus reus, the act, and the mens rea, okay? So that's just background information. Now let's go to the law of theft. The law of theft is defined, unsurprisingly, in an act called the Theft Act, 1968. And the definition of theft is found in section 1 of the act. Okay, I'm going to read it out for you, and then I'm going to explain very briefly. A person is guilty of theft if he dishonestly appropriates property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving the other of it. Okay, that makes little sense the first time you're reading it. But in a nutshell, what this 1.5 line says is that in order for someone to be convicted of theft, the prosecution has to prove 5 things, okay? All 5 things have to be present. If they're not present, you don't have theft. Same with what I explained before. If you don't have both the actus reus and the mens rea, you don't have a criminal. Okay, so the 5 things you need to prove, and this is in your handout, okay, are first, appropriation, and I will explain what we mean by appropriation, of property, so that is number 2, that belongs to another. So combined, you need to appropriate property that is not yours, okay? That is the actus reus, it's the actual criminal act, okay? And when you are appropriating property that belongs to another, you need to be doing it dishonestly, and you need to have the intention of permanently depriving the other of their property. In other words, you need to be appropriating property belonging to another. For now, let's just think of appropriation as meaning taking, right? So you need to take property that is not yours. That is the act, okay? And you need to be doing it dishonestly, and you need to have the intention of never returning the property back, okay? If all 5 things are satisfied, you have yourself a thief. Do we have any questions? No? Okay, I'm going to take your silence as understanding, but if you do have questions, please just raise your hands and I'm more than happy to answer while I'm talking. Okay, so let's break this down. As I said, you need appropriation of property belonging to another, you need dishonestly, and you need the intention to permanently deprive the other of it. Let's start with appropriation. Appropriation, I said before, is the taking of property, okay? Really, it's more than that. Appropriation happens every time someone interferes with the property rights of an owner. So let's take, I mean, that sounds very theoretical, so let's make it a bit practical, okay? As an owner, say I own this phone, okay? As an owner of this property, I can do whatever I want with it. I can use it, I can destroy it, throw it out of the window, I can sell it, I can give it to a friend, I can put it in a drawer and never think of it again. So all of these are rights that I have in relation to my property, and that property can be a phone, it can be a pencil case, it can be my car, it can be whatever, okay? Now, every time someone does something that interferes with my property, in other words, anytime someone uses my property, touches my property, tries to sell my property, that does anything that have to do with my property, they are appropriating property, okay? So you need to understand that appropriation is not in its own, is not on its own something bad, right? Appropriation happens all the time by people who are not criminals. So when I am standing in a parking lot and I accidentally touch a car that is not mine, I am appropriating that property. That doesn't mean I'm stealing it, because I don't have dishonesty and I don't intend to take the car forever, but I am nevertheless appropriating it, okay? Similarly, if I am in the supermarket, okay, and I grab a box of biscuits and put them in the basket before I pay for them, before I pay for the biscuits are not mine. They are the supermarket's, okay? So as soon as I touch the biscuits and put them in the basket, I have appropriated them. Again, that doesn't mean that I am stealing them, because I plan on paying for them, which means that I'm not acting dishonestly, but nevertheless, I am appropriating them, okay? Is that clear? Okay, so Despina is clear. What about the rest of you? Does anyone have any questions? Okay. So let me give you an example of that. Let's start with a case. It's in your handout. It's called the Morris case. It's from 1984. In Morris, we have someone, so you need to cast your mind back to 1984, which is a time you don't remember, and you were probably not alive at the time, but that was a time before the internet and before we had scanning at the supermarket till. So basically what happened is you grabbed something from a shop, there was a sticker on it that said the price, you went to the till, they checked the sticker, they said, okay, this thing costs 10 euros or 10 pounds, and you paid the amount that was said on the sticker. So what we have here is a man who goes into a shop and he switches the price tags, okay? So he takes an item that that says it costs 10 pounds, and he takes an item that costs 20 pounds, and he changes the price tags. He then takes the item to the till that cost 20 pounds and pays the 10, okay? Is that theft? Well, the court said there is definitely appropriation here, right? One of the things that an owner can do is decide how much they are going to sell their own property. Morris, the defendant in this case, appropriated the property because he interfered with that right of the owner. Rather than accepting that the owner was selling something for 20 pounds, he changed the price and only paid 10 pounds. So the mere fact that he paid is not good enough. He was acting dishonestly because he knew that he was paying less than what the owner wanted him to pay, okay? So this is a case to show you what we mean by appropriation. Now, Morris is a bit complicated because we have a situation where someone is just changing price tags, but appropriation, as I mentioned before, is anything you do with another person's property, okay? So that's appropriation. Element number one explained. Let's go to element number two. You need to be appropriating property, okay? In the majority of cases, that is super easy to prove, extremely obvious, okay? So if someone touches my phone again, that is property. If someone touches my car, they are appropriating property. Again, pencil case is property. My house is property. My money, property. My I don't know, my clothes, property, okay? Is there anything that is not property? Well, yes, as it turns out. Let me give you an example of that. So just to explain the implications of this, if someone appropriates something that is not property, they are not stealing, because in order to be a thief, you have to have all 5 elements satisfied, right? You need to have appropriation and property and belonging to another and dishonesty and the intention to permanently deprive. So if something is not property, you only have 4 of the 5 elements satisfied and you don't have a thief, okay? So 99.9% of things around us are property. What isn't property? Well, there are a few things that aren't property. One would be electricity, right? If you steal electricity, you're not in fact stealing. You are committing another offense that is not theft. Another thing are bodies, right? If I go to Eva and I take her and I keep her in my house, that is not theft. And the reason it's not theft is because Eva's body is not property. That is a different crime. That's the crime of kidnapping. Okay, so it's not that I am not committing any offense, it's that I'm not committing the offense of property. The example that I want to focus on, however, is, I think, a pretty genius attempt by a law student of the University of Oxford back in 1979 to cheat in his law exams, okay? So the case that I have in mind is called Oxford, as in Oxford University, and Moss, right? Moss is the name of the student. So what happened in this case is we have a student who is about to sit a law exam. He knows he hasn't done very well. He knows that he's not going to do very well because he hasn't studied that much. So what he does is he breaks into the office of his professor. He finds the exam paper, takes the exam paper, okay? So at that moment in time, he has appropriated property that doesn't belong to him, okay? He takes the exam paper, he reads the questions, okay? And he puts the exam paper back. So we don't have theft there because, yes, he appropriated property that doesn't belong to him. And yes, he was doing it dishonestly, but he never had the intention of permanently depriving the professor of the exam paper. We know that because he actually put the exam paper back, okay? What he did not return is the information, right? He read the paper, he now knows the exam questions, and he's not returning that knowledge back, okay? But is that theft? In court, he argued that that is not theft because information, because knowledge is not property. It's something valuable, but it's not property. In the same way that electricity is not property, and in the same way that a body is not property. The court accepted the argument. So Moss, despite the fact that he's not a very good student, was clearly a good enough student to understand what he was doing and to understand the law of theft, to an extent that he got away with something that is, you know, dishonest at the very least. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have now explained what we mean by appropriation. It's basically anything you do with another person's property. And we have explained what we mean by property. Okay, property is pretty much everything with the exceptions that I have already explained. Okay. The third thing you need to prove in order to prove that someone is a thief is that the property belongs to another, okay? So obviously you cannot steal your own property. The reason you cannot steal your own property is because the third of the 5 elements belonging to another is not satisfied. Your own property does not belong to another. It, to state the obvious, belongs to you, okay? So are there any ways someone can avoid being found guilty of theft? if they take property that belongs to someone else? Well, like with Oxford and Moss, we have a case with a pretty good lawyer, okay? The case that I'm going to talk about now is a case called the Crown R against Adrian Small from 1987, okay? So this is what happened. These are the facts of the case. We have a man who every day walks to work, right? He wakes up, he gets ready, he gets out of the house, he starts walking to go to work. On his way to work, every day for the last week, 10 days, he sees a parked car, okay? It's just there in a field, just on the side of the road. There is this parked car. And he realizes that not only is there a parked car there that seems to be left, no one's ever using it, like it's just abandoned there, but importantly, they have left the car unlocked and they have left the car keys in the ignition, okay? So technically, all you need to do in order to take the car is just turn the keys, drive the car, and go home. So he sees the car keys the first day. He says, interesting. He sees the car keys the second day, still there, still no one taking the car. He says, now this is getting even more interesting. Day number 3, even more excited. Day number 4, he's thinking to himself, maybe someone left the car here, and the reason they left the car keys there is because it's for anyone to take. Maybe someone doesn't want this car. Okay, day number 5, he thinks to himself, okay, if after the weekend the car is still here, I'm taking it. Okay, Monday morning, he sees the car there, the car keys are still there, no one is claiming the car, he gets in, drives the car. Okay, he now says the car is his. Is that theft? What do you think? Am I talking to myself, or do you guys have an opinion? Is that theft? I would very much like to hear a voice rather than see something being written in the chat. What do you think? No? There is no right or wrong answer. That's why I'm asking you. What do you think? I'm after your opinion. No? Okay. Tell me.
I think that there's definitely appropriation and the criminal mind, even though there is a thought of that it doesn't belong to somebody, like it's an assumption made by a person, it still is a thought of basically appropriating another person's property.
Okay, so let's take a step back. Forget about the law that I have taught you, and let's imagine that this story, the story of Adrian Small, is the story of a friend of yours. So this friend of yours says, you won't believe what happened to me, da, 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 da. He tells you the story, and he then tells you, I now own a new car. What will you tell him? Will you tell him, well done, lucky you, or will you tell him, no, you have to return it, you're a thief?
I would say return it, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. So the owner of the the person was prosecuted. Okay. So the police thought he did something wrong. The case goes to court. The lawyer argues, well, clearly we have appropriation here. He took the property. We also have property. Okay. So the car is definitely property. He acted dishonestly, like, right? He took things that were not really his, okay? He never had the intention of returning it. But the lawyer says, this is not theft because this property does not belong to another. And the reason it doesn't belong to another, said the lawyer, is because it belongs to no one, okay? And the reason it doesn't belong to anyone is because it has been abandoned there. Obviously, whoever had this car didn't want it anymore. That's why they left it where they left it, okay? So when my client, says the lawyer, took it, they weren't taking property that belongs to another, they were taking property that belonged to no one, because whoever the original owner was didn't want to have anything to do with this property anymore. Rather surprisingly, because I do agree with you that this is, you know, this is probably theft, right? So rather surprisingly, the court said, no, this is not theft, okay? And the reason it's not theft is because the car truly has been abandoned, okay? It truly belongs to no one. So what we have done so far is we have explained what we mean by appropriation and what we mean by property and what we mean by belonging to another, and combined these three elements, appropriation of property, belonging to another, make up the actus reus of theft, okay? However, as we said at the very beginning of the class, in order for someone to be a criminal, you need to have both the actus reus and the mens rea, okay? So you need to have the criminal act, which we have explained, but you also need to have the guilty mind, which we haven't yet, okay? So let's start with the first of the two things that need to be proven for the guilty mind. The defendant has to be acting dishonestly, okay? What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, the courts have over the years told us that we believe that someone is acting dishonestly if the reasonable person in the street believes that they are acting dishonestly, okay? So if I am in a supermarket, I see a really expensive bottle of wine. I think to myself, I would quite like to have that with my husband tonight, but I'm not willing to pay 30 euros. And I just put it in my bag. Is that theft? Well, there is appropriation of property that belongs to another. It definitely belongs to the supermarket. I definitely plan on not returning it because I will be drinking the wine with my husband tonight. The only question that remains is, am I acting dishonestly? Okay, and the test for that is, if I asked the average person in the street whether my act was dishonest or not, what would they say? Well, I think 100% of the people that you ask, is taking a bottle of wine from the supermarket dishonest, will say yes, okay? If that happens, you have theft, okay? So that's the test of how we determine whether someone is dishonest or not dishonest. And in the majority of cases, this is pretty straightforward. So taking a bottle of wine from the supermarket, clearly dishonest. Taking a car that is not mine because I think is nice looking, again, dishonest. Going into a shop and grabbing a t-shirt that I like and putting it in my bag, again, dishonest. Going to a friend's house and picking up some money that I found on the table without telling them anything, dishonest. In most cases, it's pretty straightforward what we mean by dishonesty, okay? But sometimes it's not, okay? And let me give you an example of that. The example that I want to give you, it comes from a case called Holden from 1991. Okay, so these are the facts. The facts are a bit complicated, so stay with me. We have a company that changes car tires, okay? So you take your car, they take out the old car tires, they put in new ones, they charge you, you go home. The old car tires that they took out of your car, they just leave them there. They have a large field and they leave the old car tires there. Now, everyone working at this company, once every few months, goes to this field where the old car tires are and they take some old tires, okay, without asking anyone, and they sell them to other companies, okay? They sell them as used tires, because if you want to have your car tires changed and you don't have a lot of money for new car tires, you can replace your very old car tires with newer but still old car tires, okay? So what they do is they choose the best old car tires and they sell them to other companies that put them on cars, okay? And everyone does that. They are appropriating, they're taking property, the tires, that belong to another. The car tires don't belong to them, they belong to the company that they are working for. And they have no intention of returning the car tires, right? They are selling them. The question is, are they acting dishonestly? Well, an important consideration here is that in their employment contract, there is a provision that says employees are not allowed to take the car tires, okay? So it's written down. So we now have a new employee, Mr. Holden. He comes to the company, he never bothers to read his employment contract, as most people don't, okay? He sees his colleagues every few weeks picking up car tires, taking them to other shops and making some extra money out of that. So one day he decides to do the same. So technically he is breaching his employment contract, but he doesn't know because he never read the employment contract and he thinks it's fine because everyone else is doing it. So the question becomes, is that dishonest? And the test again is, what would the reasonable person in the street think? Okay? What would the average person, if you ask the average person and the average person is you, okay? What would you think? Okay? I think that he's not acting dishonestly. I think he is making a mistake. I think he's not a very smart man for failing to read his employment contract, but we don't put people in prison because they are idiots. We put people in prison because they have a guilty mind. And I don't think he had a guilty mind in this instance. I think he just thought he could make some easy money and didn't really think this through. Do we have any questions? Any comments? Any sign of life? No? Okay. So let's go to the fifth requirement. So we have discussed appropriation, property, belonging to another, and we have explained what we mean by dishonestly. The last requirement is a requirement that the defendant has an intention to permanently deprive the person of their property. So to put it simply, if you borrow without permission something, no matter how expensive it is, just a second now, we'll get to your question, Despina. If you borrow something without permission from someone else, no matter how expensive it is, you are not a thief. So, and that is actually quite shocking. Huh? So if I go to my colleague Andreas and I take his computer without him knowing, and I just return it, and the reason that I'm taking his computer is because my computer broke down and I need another computer, and I just cannot be bothered to find myself another computer. So I go to Andreas, I take his computer, don't say anything. I know that my computer will be fixed in 48 hours, and I think to myself, I'll just use his and return it in 48 hours, okay? In the meantime, Andreas is worried about his computer, he cannot do his work, he's freaking out, and I say nothing, okay? If I return it in 48 hours, and I intended to return it in 48 hours, that is not theft, which is pretty shocking, okay? You are only committing theft if at the time you were taking the property, you were planning to never return it. Okay? Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's fair, or do you think the law is too lenient? What do you think? And then I will go to Despina's questions about Despina's question about dishonesty. What do you think? Do you like the law, or do you think that the law should be stricter? Okay, no opinions. Andrea, what do you think? Do you think that it's okay that I can take your computer without asking permission and not going to prison?
Not really.
Okay, so the reason, thank you. So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's fine.
The reason there is this, rather lenient, the reason there was this rather lenient provision in the law that says that I can take Andreas' stuff or anyone's stuff and not be considered a thief if I am planning to return it, is because prosecuting someone costs money, okay? And someone needs to investigate, someone needs to check what's happening, someone needs to pay for the judge, someone needs to pay for the prosecutor, and ultimately the state thought that, borrowing someone's property is inconvenient if you don't inform the person whose property has been borrowed, but it's not that a serious thing, and therefore there is no reason to involve criminal law, okay? And I can see it. I mean, Andreas would probably not be very happy with me, but ultimately no harm done. At most, he just spent 48 hours worrying, but now he's happy, okay? But there are situations out there that are a lot more problematic. Let me give you the example. I started teaching criminal law when I was getting married. And I had this, constant worry about my wedding dress, okay? So I started teaching this, literally, this was the first year that I was teaching criminal law. I got married in May. I was teaching this in April. So this was, my wedding was the one thing that I had in mind when I was teaching theft. And I read this provision and I thought to myself, that cannot be right, because I got married on the 17th of May. Now, if my friend Liva came to my house on the 16th of May, took my wedding dress and planned to return it on the 18th of May, so she took it the day before I got married and she returned it the day after I got married, that's not theft. But what am I going to do with the wedding dress after the wedding is over, right? As far as I am concerned, the whole value of the wedding dress is now zero, right? I don't need the wedding dress after I got married, but the law doesn't recognize that, okay? The law says you paid for your wedding dress X amount of money, okay? You can sell your wedding dress X amount of money. You lost nothing. The fact that on the day of my wedding, I didn't have a wedding dress to wear is not a consideration for the law, okay? So I have two questions from Despina in the chat. The first question has to do with dishonesty. Can we argue that the person who took the tires didn't know that he shouldn't be taking them, but he should have known? Yes, you can argue that, right? You can argue that the reasonable person reads their employment contract. I don't know whether that's the case, though. I mean, if you ask 10 adults, have you read your employment contract? I think 9 of them would say no. I'm a lawyer. I read my employment contract 4 years after I got employed, okay? So you can make the argument, but I don't know how persuasive is the argument. If I go to Despina's second question, I didn't hear what you explained. My question was bad. So I was explaining in a nutshell that according to the Theft Act, if you take someone's property and you intend to return it, then you are not committing theft. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am starting to have quite a few comments in the chat, okay? Please talk, okay? So I will read the last comment from Eva, and then anyone else who has any questions, unmute your mic and make yourselves known, okay? So what about instances, asks Eva, with family members? What happens if a child steals something from a family member and does not return it? Do the requirements from the Theft Act apply irrespective of family relations, or is it different? Very good question. Okay, so basically it's not one question, it's two questions that you're asking. The first question is, what happens if a child commits a crime? Well, the criminal law doesn't recognize children as potential criminals until they turn 10 years old, okay? So if you are an 8-year-old who commits theft, or even an 8-year-old who commits murder, and this has happened in the UK, it's not that you don't go to prison with adults, it's that you don't go to prison at all because you are not a criminal. Okay, so if you are less than 10, you can never go to court. If you are between 10 and 18, you are being put on trial as an underage person. And if you are 18 and above, you are put on trial as an adult. Okay, so if this person that you're imagining, Eva, is less than 10 and they take my computer, that's not theft, because no 9-year-old can commit theft, period. Okay, it doesn't matter if they were understanding what they were doing. It doesn't matter if they understood that it was wrong. It doesn't matter that if this 9-year-old is a criminal mastermind and they took my computer and sold it online. All of that is irrelevant. Okay, if they are less than 10, they cannot be prosecuted for any criminal offense. Okay, now if the child is more than 10, then potentially, yes, they can be prosecuted. That takes us to your second question, which is what happens with family members? Well, they are potentially not thieves, not because they are family members, but because they are not acting dishonestly. Okay, so if I go to my sister's wardrobe, which I do often, and I take one of her dresses without asking her, and I just wear it, okay, that's not theft, not because she's my sister, but because I know that she will not mind. And since I know that she will not mind, I am not acting dishonestly. Okay, before I answer, I see a raised hand. Andrea, what time does your session start?
In 5 minutes, I take it.
Okay, so we will be finishing in 5 minutes, don't worry. Yes, I saw a raised hand for a second there, or am I hallucinating? Who was it?
Yes.
Hi.
You've mentioned, hello. You mentioned a time frame while talking about the theft. You said if, for example, your friend returns it in 48 hours, it will not be considered as a theft. Is there a specific time frame in which where a person appropriates someone's property is considered to be a theft?
That's a really good question. The answer is no. So the law doesn't tell us whether there is a time frame. But obviously, the longer you wait to return something, the harder it is for you to convince the court that you were planning to return it. Okay? So if you do borrow someone's property without letting them know, make sure you return it as quickly as possible. Okay, so I have two exercises for you. They are very short. Let's try and answer them very quickly. So one is the following. Molly enters the bookshop where she picks up a book. The book is £10, okay, with the intention of slipping it into a large pocket hidden inside her coat, okay? Sensing that she is being watched, she replaces the book on the shelf and walks outside. Is that theft? Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer because I only have 4 minutes left. Well, we have appropriation very clearly. Okay, she has taken the book, she has touched it. We are talking, so we have someone saying not theft. That is very brave of you and also very correct. Well done. Okay, so why? Well, actually, let me. That is very brave of you, but also kind of not very correct. Okay, let me explain. Okay, you are thinking that it's not theft because she put the book back, right? And that is good thinking. That is why I said very correct. But let's break this down. Okay, there is appropriation. She took the property. There is property. It's the book. It belongs to another. Okay, the book owner owns the book. She hasn't paid for it. Okay, she is acting dishonestly, right? She intended to take the book without paying for it. We know because the scenario tells us that she hid it in her coat, right? And she didn't intend to return it back. Okay, so at that moment in time, when she took the book, okay, she committed theft. She then changed her mind and put it back, but that doesn't undo the theft. Okay, so you are right that she would not be prosecuted, okay, because she put back the book, and it's not worth prosecuting someone who hasn't really caused the real harm. But on paper, this is theft, okay, because all 5 elements are satisfied. Let's go to the second and last scenario before Andreas takes over. Harry is very sad and easily distracted because he has just broken up with his girlfriend. Okay, he goes to the supermarket to buy some milk and chocolates. Absent-mindedly, he puts the chocolates in his bag rather than in the supermarket basket. He goes to the cashiers to pay, pays for the milk, but entirely forgets to pay for the chocolates. He realizes that he did not pay for the chocolates when he gets home, but he is too bored to go back to the supermarket and pay for them. Has Harry committed theft? Okay, well, did he appropriate? Yes, he took the chocolates. Is there property? Yes, the chocolates are property. Does the property belong to him? Clearly no, it belongs to another. It belongs to the supermarket, okay? Was he acting dishonestly when he appropriated the properties? Okay, the answer is no. He didn't have the intention to steal the property, the chocolates. He absent-mindedly, by mistake, did not pay for them. Therefore, there is no dishonesty, okay, at that moment in time, okay? When he realized that, Kristen says at the store there was no dishonesty, but when he goes home, he did realize that something was wrong. But you need all 5 elements to be taking place at the same time, okay? By the time he got home and he became dishonest, you are right that he had become dishonest, okay? The actus reus had already taken place, so there is no theft. Does that make sense? Okay, with that, I will leave you. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me or listen to me. And Andrea, you take over.
Okay, thanks very much, Nasia.
My pleasure.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Andreas, and I'm a lecturer in EU law and theory. And today I'm going to deliver a session that is a little bit different from what Nasia did. I know that today's event is marketed as a Become a Lawyer for a Day, but what we're going to discuss is not really kind of the nitty-gritty part of law with contracts and interesting criminal cases such as those that Nasia mentioned. It's a little bit different. It's still about law, don't get me wrong. It's just about a different way of looking at law. So what we're going to talk about today is something that hopefully will help you better grasp or understand the way law functions, in a society, and the way we interact with law in our daily lives, what role the law has to play, how we should behave with respect to law, and so forth. So from the outset, let me say that this is more of a dialogue than a delivery. So I will be expecting you to participate. So please feel free to activate your microphones at any times and ask any questions or try to answer any question that I pose. And the second thing that I wanted to say is I'm going to raise some issues that might seem controversial. Don't hesitate to answer. Part of this exercise is to really evaluate the way we think about certain things and the way that we think law should think about certain things. So even if some of the questions I pose touch on maybe some sensitive issues or some issues that you think are controversial, or even if you think that your opinion is a minority opinion, something that other people don't share, I encourage you to talk, because that's part of the exercise that I want to engage in. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions? So that was kind of my introduction to the session. So everything's clear, yeah? All right, so I do have actually prepared a short presentation for today. Which is now loading. All right, there you go. So our topic for today is disagreement. And we're going to talk about disagreements in law and about law. And we are going to talk about those disagreements within the context of a democracy. So let's start with a rather simple case. What do you see here in this picture? It's fairly clear, isn't it? Again, you can activate your microphone and talk. Okay, Natasha here is saying that a car jumps the red light. Good. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? A bad thing. Why is it a bad thing? Because it's breaking the law, I take it? Okay, good. Because it breaks the law. Is the law good? Is this law good? Do you agree with this law? Come on, guys, it's not a very difficult question, is it? We have a law saying that you cannot cross the red light. And Natasha here is saying that, yes, this is a good law because it helps keep us safe. And that's a fairly straightforward answer, right? Part of the reason why we need law and we have law is because it keeps us safe. So this is a good law. Let's do another example. You all know that when you have a certain income, you pay tax on that income. Does everyone know that? I know that maybe some of you might not be old enough to have an income, but if you have an income, you have to pay tax. Yes, okay, good. I hope that Natasha is not the only one who knows that. Okay, good. Right, so different countries have different laws about tax, and in Cyprus, let's do an example. If you make less than 19,500 euros per year, that income is not subject to tax, right? It's tax-free. Do you know that? That there's a minimum threshold of money that you need to be making in order to start paying tax? Yes, okay, so we're aware of that law. Do you think, yes, in all countries they have a law about that, but in different countries, you know, the amount is different. So in the UK, it's fairly low. I think it's £12,750, maybe. In any case, that's not the point. Do you think this is a good law? This is a fair law? Is there silence because you're thinking about it? Okay, so Natasha is saying it's good to have law about income tax because it helps fund the government, which is absolutely right. Let me ask you this, Natasha, since you're the only one who participates in this discussion, albeit through the chat. Do you think that the 19,500 threshold is fair and just? Of course, this question is open to everyone, right? Not just Natasha. So do you think that the minimum threshold in Cyprus is a good threshold? Natasha here is saying that she feels this is a good amount. Okay, fair enough. Does everyone agree? Do you agree that this is the correct amount? I don't know is also a valid answer, right? Because, you know, some decisions, so Despina is saying I don't know, and I take it that Despina is saying I don't know because some decisions that the law makes are quite technical, right? Maybe we don't have the expertise, maybe we're not economists. Well, some of us certainly aren't economists. Maybe this threshold is the result of a deliberation by economists and experts who weighed the median wages and you know, how high the cost of living is and so forth, and they reached an amount. But of course, that hasn't stopped people from talking about it, right? Because even today, there are people thinking, oh, this is too low, we need to raise the threshold so that poorer people or people making less money pay less tax, and people who make more money pay more tax, right? So that's kind of a disagreement that we might find here. Some people might say, oh, the threshold, it's fine, but it should have been a little bit higher. So the reason why I started off with these two examples is because I don't really think that they're very controversial, right? So in the first example, we saw that, and I think everyone agreed that it is good to have a law regulating traffic saying that you cannot pass the red light. And in the second case, I think, or at least from your reaction, I gathered that you all agree that we should have certain thresholds below which no one should pay tax, even if there might have been some confusion about the precise threshold that we're talking about, right? Is it 19,500 euros? Is it 24,000 euros? Is it 18,000 euros, and so forth? So the question that I'm trying to get at is this: if law is supposed to serve justice, supposed to achieve just outcomes, then some laws might be a little bit controversial because we might disagree on what justice requires. So my first question is this: do you think that we can agree on what justice requires, on what is fair, what is just, what we should be doing? Do you think we should agree on that? Do you think we can agree on that? Do you think that we can agree on that in some areas of law, but maybe we cannot agree on that on other areas of law? Or do you think that we can never agree on what justice requires? Or you might think that we can always agree on what justice requires, and it's just a question of working out the details, such as in the law about the income tax, right? We can agree that justice requires we pay tax, but we might disagree on the details. So Desmond asks, agree means obey. I didn't say that, right? So at this stage, I'm only talking about whether if we were to make the law, we could agree on what justice would require of us. Natasha is saying that we can only agree on some, but not all, as it is what someone interprets. Okay, so I take what Natasha is saying is that there are some things on which we can agree and are not open to interpretation, and other matters that are in fact open to interpretation, that are kind of the gray area. So we can agree on a core of things, but we might have disagreements in the periphery of cases, right? In more less clear cases. Natasha, is that what you're suggesting? Good. Okay. So that's your point, that law always has gray areas. And in fact, we can think of multiple examples to support that. Everyone here might think that murdering someone is unjust, is immoral, but we might disagree on the morality of other acts. Such as you talked about theft earlier, we might disagree about whether the law should penalize certain types of thefts. What if someone steals a loaf of bread because they are starving, right? And the law does in fact make some provision for that, but it's not the topic of our discussion. So what I want to do now is turn to some laws or some legal issues that might be a bit more controversial, right? Because what we've seen so far is fairly straightforward, not very controversial to say that, we should have a law regulating traffic. That's fairly straightforward. But let's examine some more controversial cases, we might say. So let's start with torture. Do you all agree that torture is immoral and wrong? Torturing people. Yes. Okay, good. Malvina is saying yes, and Christian is saying this. Okay, so pretty much everyone agrees. That's a good thing. And indeed, right, the prohibition of torture or inhuman degrading treatment is what we call a peremptory norm of international law. It means that it applies everywhere at all times and no derogation is allowed. You cannot torture someone under any circumstances. Now forget about the law for a minute, and I'm going to pose you a scenario that was posed to me when I was a student in a law school taking human rights. And that's the question of the ticking bomb terrorist. Right? The scenario goes something like this. There's a terrorist who has planted bombs all around the city, and that terrorist is now has been apprehended, right, and is now in front of you. And the scenario says that the only way in which you can get the terrorist to tell you where the bombs are in time and save hundreds of thousands of lives is if you torture them. So my question to you is, do you think that we should torture the terrorist in order to save hundreds of thousands of lives? And for now, ignore empirical evidence suggesting that torture never works or that you will not be able to get an accurate answer in time and all that. Let's assume that the terrorist is able to give you the right answer. Yes, Natasha, that's why I said that let's assume that torturing will give you the answer. So we know for a fact that if we torture this guy, then we can save thousands of lives. In this case, do you think that we should torture that person? So Natasha is saying that it's better to torture one person to save thousands. And Panayota would agree, Despina would agree. Of course, Despina says, boy, that of course would certainly trigger human rights lawyers. But in any case, as I mentioned earlier, you can have any views you want and you can express them freely. I'm not going to judge you for any of your views. So it appears, Balbina, go ahead.
It is wrong to torture someone, but you would save thousands of lives. So maybe it's for a good cause.
Well, it is. That's why you do it, right? It's because it's for a good cause. Incidentally, for those of you who chose to torture that person, you have engaged in what we call a consequentialist balancing exercise, a utilitarian exercise, where you balanced the harm done to one person against the benefit of an action. The benefit is saving thousands of lives. And if indeed you do that, right? If indeed you did that, that balancing exercise, then it's different from another balancing exercise where someone might say, oh, torturing is always and in principle wrong, and you should always avoid it at any cost. It doesn't matter if you save 100,000 lives, it doesn't matter if you save 1 million lives. This kind of reasoning we call deontology, essentially doing what's right. So the point of this exercise has been to show you that even if we agree that torture is wrong, we might disagree about laws regulating torture. Because some of you might say that, oh, let's have a law against torture, but with exception if, certain circumstances obtain. Ratib, please.
Hello.
Hello.
I wanted to ask how basically how valuable is the argument that the law applies for everybody when compared to the argument that basically saving all is more valuable than torturing of a person?
Okay. Very good question. Let me clarify something first, right? First, there's what we call moral considerations, right? What would morality tell us to do? Maybe morality tells you don't torture anyone at any time, or morality tells you you may torture someone if you're going to save thousands of lives. So that's one question, the question of morality. Then there's the question of law. Law makes certain pronouncements. It tells you things you can do and things you cannot do. Law guides your behavior. In figuring out what the law should say, lawmakers typically take into consideration moral issues, moral arguments as well. So, in our example, presumably, before we enact a law about torture, lawmakers take into consideration all these different moral arguments that we've discussed, right? Deontological arguments, consequentialist arguments, utilitarian arguments, all those arguments, they are considered. And lawmakers have to make certain decisions. They have to decide, should we give priority to consequentialism and therefore say, okay, it's okay to torture if we're going to save hundreds of thousands of lives, or should we take a principled position against torture and that's it? Does that make sense, Ratim?
Yes.
So
yes.
lawmakers, when they make a decision, they take into account those moral considerations and they make a judgment. They end up with a law. What I want us to discuss here is some disagreements we might have about law. So for instance, exactly the pros and cons of the situation. Lawmakers do that not just for moral reasons, but also for practical considerations, right? The practicalities also are a consideration that lawmakers take into account. So what I wanted us to do, and the reason why I brought up torture, is because the law might be very clear, right, about torture is never allowed. But when we think of difficult cases, we might disagree with the law. And we might think that, hold on a minute, maybe lawmakers should have taken a different position. Or we might end up thinking that, okay, it's clear that it's a very complex case, this one. And in the end, I do agree with the law. It's better to have this principled position. So let's talk about another perhaps controversial case. And here you're going to be doing most of the talking, because my question is whether you think that the law should permit abortions on demand. So what this means is that, do you think that the law should recognize and allow for women to have abortions, no matter what the circumstances? Simply grant a right of abortion to all women, no matter what. What do you think? Do you think that the law should permit that? So Natasha is saying totally against abortion. Fantastic. Natasha, let me ask this. Why? Why are you totally and in principle against abortion? And let me clarify something, right? I'm not asking about your personal views. I'm asking about what you think the law should do. Because maybe you think that, okay, for me, abortion is always wrong, but the law should be different for different reasons, right? So I'm saying that against abortion because it involves the murder, we could say, of a child. Correct, Natasha? So you think that this should be reflected in the law. You think that the law should prohibit abortions. Is that it? Yes, okay. And Panayota here is saying something different. It is our body, we should do whatever we want. Okay, so here we have a different position compared to Natasha's. Malvina, please.
I believe that any woman should be allowed to have this decision because it's our own body. And if we don't have what we need at this point, for example, at this age, I can't raise a child. It will be a miserable thing for me and for the child. So I believe that abortion should be an option for every woman in every country.
Okay, fair enough. What does everyone else think? We have 3 people who have expressed opinions. Anyone else? no. Despina is saying it should not be permitted, but should be allowed for certain circumstances. For example, if the woman's health is in danger. I get that, Despina, but note that the question is about on-demand abortions. I think that pretty much everyone agrees that if pregnancy is the result of incest or rape or is a danger to the health of the woman, then abortion should be allowed. But here I'm asking about on-demand abortions. Whenever you want, you can abort the pregnancy. You can terminate the pregnancy. So I take it that Despina is opposed to that. So let's summarize, right? Because we have kind of a conflict here, which was exactly the point that I was hoping to make. On one hand, we have some people saying that the law should never permit on-demand abortions because we should recognize rights to the child, which is to the unborn child, be a bit more specific here, because the unborn child cannot defend itself, it's the vulnerable party, so the law should protect it. And you might think that, if you have religious beliefs, you might think that religion is also a factor here in this discussion. And other people might be thinking that the rights of the unborn child should not take priority over the right of a woman to do with her body whatever she wants. And Malvina's point is that it's not just about giving birth to a child, it's about raising it, it's about having the resources to raise and support the child. So if we don't allow on-demand abortions, then we might end up with greater societal problems. A bunch of women not having the resources to raise a child and being stuck with a child, making them and the child miserable. And, adoption might be an option, as Natasha points out here, but the fact of the matter remains that it is the woman who has to bear the child for 9 months. In any case, abortion is one of those cases that we think are quite a bit controversial. And our discussion now is evidence of that, right? We had 4 people participate in this discussion, and we have a division of opinion, right? Some people think that the law should permit on-demand abortions. Other people think that the law shouldn't permit on-demand abortions. So abortion is just one of those cases. And legal systems in different countries face all sorts of different controversial things, controversial issues. In different countries, there are different controversial issues. Some controversial issues in one country will not be controversial issues in another country. Let's take one example from the list I have here. So in the list, you can see some controversial issues. Let's do gun rights. In the United States, gun rights, the right of a person to bear arms and the circumstances under which they can bear arms and the circumstances under which they can use those arms and so forth. In the US, there's a discussion about those rights. Why? Because the American Constitution, the Second Amendment of the American Constitution, provides of what has been interpreted as a right to bear arms. On the other hand, other countries do not have such controversial issues, right? So in Cyprus, it's not an issue, right? The law is what it is. Not everyone has the right to have a gun at their home. Some people do. Those who do, they have certain licenses and so forth. So what I'm trying to get at here is that every legal system will face certain controversial issues. And what I mean by controversial issues, I mean issues on which opinions will be starkly divided. So you can see that there's a distinction between the first cases that we discussed, someone running the red light, or the level of taxation that should remain, the level of income that should remain tax-free. And there are other issues that are very controversial, like abortion or euthanasia. Euthanasia might be another such example. And to conclude this kind of discussion about controversial issues, one that is a little bit more current, and that's the question of mandatory vaccinations against COVID-19. So let's discuss this last controversial issue for the next 3 minutes, because for the last 10 minutes, there's something else that I want to discuss. So for this topic, mandatory vaccinations against COVID-19, what do you think? Yay or nay? And why? See, the why is the crucial bit here. Because one thing that you will find out in a law school is that you always need to be justifying your answer. An answer without justification is pretty much nothing, not worth it. So Natasha is saying it's important to because we have to stop the virus. So Natasha is in favor of mandatory vaccinations, I take it. Yes, correct? Is that correct? Let's see. Yeah, save vulnerable people as well yourself. Okay. On the other hand, Panayota, sticking to the same principle, says no, because it's our body. We should be in charge of it. We should be able to decide what we want. Anyone else?
We should trust the process, I believe.
Trust the process. Are you a Philadelphia 76ers fan? See, that was a basketball joke for you. So trust the process, you mean allow for it?
Yes, we should trust the doctors and the scientists.
So your view is that if science tells us that mandatory vaccinations are necessary, we should do it. Is that right?
Yes, maybe it will result to something better instead of something bad.
Okay. Ratib?
I believe yes, but on the other hand, there are many people out there who cannot physically be vaccinated because of medical issues and stuff.
Okay,
and maybe
but we can have, excuse me, we could have a law with a provision for that, right? Say that vaccination is mandatory for everyone, with the exception of those who have a medical clearance, let's say.
Oh, okay, yes.
So are you happy with a law like that?
Yes, sure.
Okay, sure. Eva is saying that she's in favor because it protects us, even if to a certain extent. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was expecting more of a divided opinion here. Because, I mean, the argument that Panayota made is quite popular, I would say, right? That you cannot force people to do things on pretty much whatever emergency might come up. They're saying we should always try to protect ourselves and save our. Plus, if you go on holidays, you need it too. That's absolutely right. But, Panayota's point is quite forcible as well, to say that, hold on a minute, why should the government impose on people this decision? This is something that people should be doing for themselves. So, think of the controversial cases we've discussed, mandatory vaccinations and on-demand abortion. how do you think that the law should decide on those things? What should the law do? How should we decide on those controversial issues? So let's do a practical exercise. Let's say in this group we have 7 people, because I've excluded Lida for now. So we have 7 people in this group. Let's say that you are a mini community and you need to decide a law on abortion for everyone. How are you going to decide that? Because Natasha is saying, note down all the pros and cons and see what seems best. Would that work in our case on abortion? Because it seems to me that, Natasha, you yourself had some strong positions about abortion, and other people might have strong positions about abortion. Malvina, you wanted to say something?
Maybe I would use the theory of utilitarianism. What would make the majority happier?
So why utilitarianism and not democracy or majority voting?
Yes. Also democracy, yeah.
Right?
Take
Because
a vote.
one easy way to settle this question is through taking a vote. If it's just the 7 of us, we can say, okay, 2 options. One option, permit abortions on demand. Second option, do not permit abortions on demand. Let's vote. Does that sound fair? Do you agree with that?
Yes, that's the most fair option.
Okay. Do you all agree with that? Yes, fair, yes. Boy. Okay. Let's do another example. Again, 7 people in the group. Let's say that 2 of you are vegetarians. You don't eat meat at all. And the 7 of you should decide on a restaurant to go have dinner tonight. And let's say that the 5 of you vote for the steakhouse. Is that fair that all 7 of you should have to go to the steakhouse?
Yes.
Yes, it's fair. So we don't care about the 2 people who don't eat meat.
I'm also a person that doesn't eat meat. And
there you
when
go.
all my friends want to go at a restaurant, I have to follow.
You
So
have to follow. Okay, they can eat chips. Boy, that's harsh. Okay. So let me ask you something else. Let's say that we have 7 people in our group. Again, the same 7 people. And let's say in this example that Eva is the only economist in the group. And the 7 of us should decide on where to invest our money. And let's say that we take a vote, and Eva is the only one who thinks that we should invest in, let's say, green energy. Everyone else thinks differently. Majority voting would tell you go for what most people want. Would that be fair? Would that be the best decision in terms of justice? So Natasha is saying, look at her advice because she has more knowledge. Well, since we only have my 5 minutes left, I'm going to wrap this up a little bit. Because the examples that I've provided here in terms of voting reveal something that might be a problem with democracies in general. And this type of democracy that is only about voting and about nothing else is not really a democracy. It's what we call a majoritarian democracy. And that problem is that democracies or majority votings don't always get things right. And if they're dealing with controversial issues, Majorities might be swayed, they might be persuaded by wrong arguments, false arguments, misleading arguments, non-expert advice, they might disregard experts, peer pressure, and so forth. So although majority voting is an easy way out, it might not be the most effective. And that's why some people talk about different kinds of democracies. Another type of democracy is what we call deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy is the idea that whenever you deal with a controversial issue, you should really engage with different views. So every view is heard, every view is collected from the minority and the majority, and those views are evaluated, so they are criticized and being talked over again and again and again, until you reach a position that is what we call mutually acceptable. Now, this might sound, very good and very effective, and yes, that's how our democracies should work. But deliberative democracy also has some difficulties, some problems. One core problem is that deliberative democracy cannot allow for all opinions to be heard, because then deliberative democracy would never end, right? So some opinions are still excluded. They are still outside. They're still minority views. One example that I have here is about animal rights. Today, people might be indeed talking about animal rights as if this is a consideration that the law should take into account. But 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, right? 20 years ago or 30 years ago, no one cared about animal rights. But today, people do. 30 years ago, animal rights were not even included in deliberations of democracies, right? They were not included in this process of evaluating different positions and identifying, are they right, are they wrong, and so forth. And so the last question that I want to leave you with is this. All the cases we've discussed are controversial. In all of those cases, you are going to find yourself holding certain positions, certain views, that might end up being different to what the law says, right? You might, for example, think that abortion should never be allowed, and yet in a particular legal system, abortion is de facto allowed, or by law. So the question is, how should you behave if you disagree with the law? We're running out of time, so I'm just going to kind of list a few things that you can think of doing if you disagree with the law, and should you choose to pursue a law degree. I'm sure that those issues will definitely come up all the time. In a democracy, in a representative democracy like the democracies we have today, we don't make the laws directly, representatives make them for us. So one option you have if you disagree with the law is get in touch with your representatives. You can write to them, you can try calling them, try to get them to listen. That might not always be very effective because maybe they're not easy to reach. So you have other options. One other option is use public discourse. Public discourse is what we call the space in the society where you can talk freely. You can write a letter in a newspaper, you can use the media, maybe get on a radio show, express your views, explain why you think that the law is wrong, try to get people to listen, and if you get enough people to listen, then maybe this creates a movement that changes the law. Sometimes you might disagree with a law and you might think that the law is unconstitutional, essentially, that it contravenes some other legal principle. In that case, you can take a case to court. If none of this fails, if none of this works, Then we have other means of dissent. In a democracy, you have the right to protest. This means that you can engage in a demonstration, or, in democracies, you have free speech, which means that you can write something on a board and appear in front of a government building and hold that up where you express your dissent about something. And the last thing that I want to just mention and leave it at that is unlawful protest. Is protest that is against the law, but is of political nature, and within democratic systems or functional democratic systems, it is accepted by the society. And those are actions of what we call civil disobedience. And for that, I want to leave you with this picture here of Rosa Parks. I don't know if you know Rosa Parks. If not, then Google her and read about her and find out who she was. Rosa Parks was a pioneer of the civil rights movement in the US, and she was the person who instigated the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott in Alabama in the US in order to make a case for the equality of Black people in the US. Now, this has been this session. I know it has been very brief. Hopefully, I've managed to kind of identify some issues and some questions that exist in a democratic system. And I look forward to discussing these issues in more detail should you wish to do that in the future. Liva, over to you. Thanks, guys, for joining me.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for this very interesting session. I really enjoyed it, and I think the students have enjoyed it as well. You had a great participation, so thank you, students, for participating. Now we'll do a brief session on the LLB at UCLan Cyprus for those who are interested in learning more about our LLB degree. So I'm going to share my screen. First of all, we'll do a presentation on what is the law degree, what we offer through the LLB degree, and then I will show you our website with regards to finding more information about what we do, what kind of extracurricular activities we offer to our students, and etc. So what is a law? What is an LLB degree? It's, of course, an undergraduate degree in law. And the LLB itself derives from the Latin phrase ligum baccalaureus, which means the ligum means law and the baccalaureus means bachelor's degree. And the LLB degree is usually a degree which is chosen by those who would like to practice as lawyers, become solicitors or barristers. But not only. We do have many students who have decided to choose to do the LLB degree with the aim to consider an alternative path, such as business and management, marketing and communications, banking and finance, human resources, politics as well, tax consultants, compliance officer, and journalists, and so on. Now, you may wonder, how can you use an LLB degree to do an alternative career instead of becoming lawyers? Well, you can use your LLB degree because through the LLB degree, you will develop specific skills, and those specific skills are not only relevant for a career in law, but are also relevant for a career in other alternative paths. For example, through the LLB, you may be taught with the module called as business law or company law, and this can help you actually to undertake a path in business and management. Or you may consider, let's say, you may do, let's say, a law which concerns with banking, with finance law. So you may be able to take an alternative path with banking and finance. Politics, for example, as you are all aware, many of our politics in Cyprus and also overseas are holding an LLB degree because it's a very strong degree. For example, our president at the moment, he is holding an LLB degree. He was a practicing lawyer. And compliance officer as well. Compliance officer is an officer who ensures that the company is complying with the regulations, such as anti-money laundering regulations and etc. So you can see that with an LLB degree, it's not only about becoming lawyers, but you can choose an alternative path. It's actually one of the strongest degrees that anyone could obtain, because it's not just a degree in which it requires you just to follow that specific path. It's a degree which could be used on a variety of alternative paths. So with regards to the LLB, variety of areas are covered. You may cover criminal law, and Nasia has actually covered today one area of criminal law, which is theft. You may cover family law, which concerns with the law, for example, the law on divorce, the law about child protection. You may cover company law, which is all about businesses and what are the transactions within businesses and what kind of liabilities those who are involving within businesses have. Commercial law, contract law. Contract law is also a very important area, and it is an area which you may be facing in everyday life. For example, you go to a supermarket, you want to buy a milk, you are entering into a contractual transaction. EU law is the law which concerns about the law that governs the EU member states. Human rights law, the human rights, including abortion, you have discussed today, it's part of human rights. So what kind of fundamental human rights people have and what happens when those human rights are breached. Tort law is an area that, again, you are using it in your everyday life. For example, you may be driving and you may be driving negligently, and because while you were driving, you were texting your friends, you hit a pedestrian. This is negligence. So negligence actually is part of tort law. Consumer law, it focuses on areas as to protect the consumer. So when you buy milk and you buy, let's say, a product which is not good, or a product which it is not in the state as it was described by the seller, by the manufacturer, then you are able, under your consumer rights, to sue the manufacturer. Land law is about laws concerning property. Environmental law, as you can see from the name, it concerns about the law that affects the environment. Now with the climate change, environmental law is an important area of law. Maritime law is a law which focuses on the law of the sea itself. International law, we look as to a more international law oriented areas as to how international works in general, how it affects also domestic laws with regards to that. And employment law, when you enter into a contract, into an employment contract, what kind of rights do you have? What kind of rights do you have in case, let's say, your employee dismiss you from work? And tax law, which is about the regulations and the laws that have to be followed with regards to taxes, and many more. This is a non-exhaustive list, which can include a variety of other areas of law. So I have included some of the main areas of law, but we do have others such as jurisprudence, medicine and the law, and etc. Now, so how do you become a lawyer in Cyprus? In Cyprus, it's very, very important, first of all, to obtain the LLB degree. Without the LLB degree, you cannot actually practice as a lawyer in Cyprus. So once you obtain the LLB degree, if you choose to do so, you can start your training. You need to complete a 1-year training at a law firm, and then you will be asked to pass the Cyprus Bar examination. Once you pass the Cyprus Bar examination, then you are officially a practicing lawyer. But you have to pass through those stages in order to become a practicing lawyer. So holding an LLB and complete the 1-year training and passing the Cyprus Bar exam, these are the 3 important elements to become a practicing lawyer. Some students may choose to do a master's degree before completing the 1 year of training, and that's absolutely fine. And it is really helpful to do a master's degree because some of the students may prefer to become more experts in a particular area of law. So for example, some students may want to learn more about litigation or about criminal law or about company law. So by becoming more experts in a specific area that you're interested in, it will also help you with your job as lawyers. Do you have any questions so far, by the way? No? Okay, so what do we offer at UCLan? What do we offer under the LLB degree? Now, the Llb Core Structure at UCLan Cyprus is a 4-year course, following, of course, all the accreditations or the validation by the Cyprus Quality Assurance Body. And in order to obtain a recognized LLB degree, you have to complete what we call 240 ECTS credits. All modules are counted as 10 ECTS, which means that if you're required to complete a degree within 4 years, that means that you need to complete 60 ECTS per year. In other words, you need to do 6 modules per year. And bear in mind that, as we're going to look at in a bit, we have compulsory modules that they are compulsory to be taken, to be chosen. But we also have optional modules in which you will be given with a variety of a list to decide which optional modules you are interested in undertaking. Some of the modules are year-long, which means they are taking place in both semester 1 and semester 2. Some of the modules are semester-long modules, which means that the modules will be taken in place in only 1 semester, either in semester 1 or in semester 2. Now, with regards to the minimum entry requirements to the LLB, we require a score of 16.5 in the application or high school certificate grade of 82.5%. or an 82 A-level credits. And we also require IELTS of 5.5 or equivalent. I have provided the link to our website here, but I will guide you in a bit on how you can find more information about our LLB degree. But before we go through the website, let me show you in brief what we cover through our LLB degree. In the first year, you will have 2 compulsory modules, which is public law and legal method. The public law is more about the constitutional law, how the constitution of a country works, and this is one of the most important actually topics, because it's very important to learn how the constitution of a country works and what are the regulations and how, let's say, a law is created, because through this module you will also learn how the parliament works and how the parliament actually enacts legislations, statutes, and etc. The legal method as well will also show you a variety of areas concerning how the civil law system works and how the common law system works. What are the differences between civil law cases and criminal law cases? So you will be introducing to let's say the topic of how the courts work. And then we offer a variety of optional modules. We offer the module of current legal issues in Cyprus, the professional development and skills, where you will be able to develop specific skills as lawyers, such as how to debate, how to prepare for a meeting, how to write an essay, and how to develop your critical thinking and analysis. And then we offer comparative law, in which you will be asked to compare a variety of international law systems. Introduction to business law, when you will be given with an introduction to a variety of areas that concerns business transactions, such as commercial law, agency law, company law, tort law, and employment law. Foundations of English and Cypriot law, you will be getting the foundations with regards to what are the differences and similarities between the English system and the Cypriot law system. As you all know, we are following actually the UK system. So our law is based on the UK system itself, with some differences in some areas of law, but we have that foundation from the English law. So it's important to learn the similarities and differences between these two systems. And for those who would like to enhance their knowledge in the English language, they can choose to do the English language course. In the second year, we do have two compulsory modules. Again, the one is a contract law, which deals with contractual transactions. And the other one is criminal law, when you will be asked to discuss about the law of murder, the law of theft, and the law of rape, manslaughter, and other variety of criminal law cases. And apart from these two compulsory modules, we offer the optional modules of mooting and legal debating. So it is, let's say, the continuous of the professional skills, but in more detail, because you will be getting more practices with regards to how to prepare for a moot and how to prepare to do a legal debating. For example, today Andreas have asked you to debate with regards to the law on abortion. So you may be given with questions about whether you think abortion law is fair or not, and you will be asked to debate on this. So this is what we're doing by legal debating, through providing justifications and arguments, through using the law to debate whether the abortion law is fair or not. Then we have the classical foundations of modern law. Again, classical foundations of modern law concerns issues about justice, what is the law, is the law fair, and etc. Thinking and arguing law, it's quite similar when you will be discussing about principles of theories of justice, Aristotle, Plato. And Cyprus public law and system. The Cyprus public law and system, it is offered to our students because we are offering some of the Cyprus law modules that you will be undertaking for the bar exam. So we are preparing our students when they will go and sit the bar exams. So the Cyprus public law and system is one of the modules that is covered under the bar examination. Then we offer the foundations in human rights and the foundations of international law and EU law. In the third year, we do have again two compulsory modules. The one is tort law, which covers the area of negligence, trespass to the person. So if you, let's say, hit someone, is part of the trespass to the person. If you lock someone into a room, this is false imprisonment, and it is part of tort law. Then EU law, which is the law with regards to the EU member states. And then we do have optional modules such as the Cyprus civil and criminal law procedure, which is again part of the bar examination, consumer and commercial law, public and private international law, international human rights and criminal law, employment and family law relations. And we also offer the research methods, how to develop your research, project, and also we do offer this practical module, which is called as professionalism and work-based learning. Through this module, if you want to choose that module, you are able to get an internship in a law firm. You will work at that law firm, and from that you will get a practical experience with regards to law, and you will be asked to write a reflective block, or sorry, a reflective coursework in which you will be asked to reflect what you have learned within that 1 month of training. So that's why it's called as professionalism and work-based learning. In the final year, you do have two compulsory modules. Again, you have trust and equity. Trust is an area which deals with the circumstances when, let me give you an example. Imagine that Despina has £100,000 and she would like to retire, and she would like to create a trust for the benefit of her children. So she may appoint a third party called as a trustee to hold those £100,000 for her children until they attain the maturity age, thus being able to use those money. So a trust is a relationship when you create with a third party, and that third party, the trustee, is holding the property on trust for someone else. So the someone else, the beneficiary, is the one who gets the benefits of the trust creation. So the children here will get the benefit, will get the £100,000. Land law is about property law. It's about the law that concerns properties. And then you have the optional modules of company and corporate law, the Cyprus property and succession law, which is again another module which you will be asked to cover in the bar examination. Jurisprudence, medicine and the law, which covers the law that concerns, for example, medical negligence. So what happens when a doctor performs a negligent operation on your body? So can you sue the doctor or not, and what are the requirements? Dispute resolution. Dispute resolution is an alternative method of bringing disputes. So instead of going, let's say, to the court, you may use what we call arbitration, ADR. Is an alternative dispute resolution, and it's quicker and much cheaper than going to the court. So you will be able to find what other alternatives do we have instead of sending the case to the court. What else can we use? Then sex and violence, and of course, for those who are interested in doing more research, they can pick dissertation. So let me show you let me show you our website and what we have done the last couple of years with regards to the extracurricular activities. But bear in mind that from the first year UCLan Cyprus has started its life and the law school itself, we have been so active with regards to extracurricular activities because we do really believe that those extracurricular activities help our students develop better and develop their skills relevant for the future career. Because it's not all about the LLB degree, it's also about learning through the LLB degree. So we had mooting competitions, we had international commercial arbitration moot competitions, we have offered internships and trainerships programs, we have organized roundtable series with current and former judges from national, European, and international jurisdictions. We have organized a variety of guest lectures on a variety of topics such as EU, such as company law, such as money laundering, such as any area of law. We have also created our first blog, which is called as UCLan Cyprus Law Blog. It's a student law blog in which students have the opportunity to publish their work, and also the students can become editors of the law blog, and it's one of the skills that lawyers actually consider into account. School trips. We had 2 years ago, we had a trip with students to Poland. Field trips to district and Supreme Courts, House of Representatives, sovereign base areas, and local authorities. And also, we also have the Law Society, which organizes a variety of activities for our students. But these are, and this is a non-exhaustive list, we have many more of those extracurricular activities which we have involved. So let me show you our website now. Okay, so if you want to find more about our law degree, what you can do is just to click uclancyprus.ac.cy, then click study, and then you will find the schools, and you click on the School of Law. Here you will see an introduction to our School of Law by our head of school, Professor Stephanie Llb. And if you want to learn more about the LLB, you click on the Bachelor of Laws LLB. And then we have provided here an overview, and you will be able to see our webinars. We have a variety of webinars here with regards to a variety of areas of law, for example, the law of agency, an introduction to land law, company law, criminal law, etc. So you will be able to see a variety of webinars from our colleagues. Then you will be able to find the modules here we have discussed today, okay, in more detail, where you will be able to click on each module and find what this module is all about and how it is assessed and what is the module content. If you click on the academic faculty, you will be able to find us there. So Nasia, as you remember, she taught today the law of theft. You can also find me here. Stephanie, Claire Hoss is a senior visiting fellow. Nevi as well is one of members of staff from our law school. Dimitra, who is dealing with international criminal law and skills. Maria, who is a lecturer in financial and corporate law. Andreas, who has taught the session today, who is a lecturer in EU law and theory, and more others who are assistant lecturers. So you will be able to find our members of staff if you click on the academic faculty and learn more about our staff. We also have the professional development, which we have a variety of testimonials from our students. And in here we explain exactly what do we do. And if you click as well on, if you click on the student experience, you can find our law blog here. So if you click on that button here, you will be able to access our law blog and see the work of our students, what they have done so far. And we have posted here a variety of videos with regards to our extracurricular activities and our main activities that we have undertaken the last couple of years. So you will be able to find a lot of materials here. We had a student in 2018, an excellent student who has won actually the 2018 Queen's Young Leaders Awards in the UK. So she was able to visit the Queen and receive the award face to face. So it's good to see that our students have actually developed during their LLB degree. Do you have any questions about the LLB, about our LLB degree that you would like me to clarify? Any questions? No? Okay, if you have any further questions and you would like to learn more about our LLB degree, do not hesitate to contact me. You have my email through discussing about the law fair. So we are here to answer any inquiries you may have. You may also contact Nasia or Andreas if you are having any questions with regards to the sessions today and you want to learn more about theft or about democracy. Okay, so thank you all for attending our event. I hope we will see you in future events, because we do offer a variety of events for external students. So have a nice weekend and enjoy your day. Thank you all for attending. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.